almost done, and we set new highs. So all
What about
markets
on the
basically.
technical side, Omar, on the oil markets? Are we in a,
Sure.
is there a resistance floor somewhere near where we're at, or what's that look like?
Sure. Basically, look, if you look at a graph of oil, basically you'll see that the market moved from about the 67, call it $68 level, down to about 58, right?
On WTI.
On WTI, and if you look at the way that it's actually moved, you can argue it basically moved down in three waves. So you moved from like 68 down to about. Hold on. I'd need a minute to open the chart, but the point being, we moved down, we moved up a little bit, and then we closed below that. That is a signal. A three wave kind of move is a signature of a kind of corrective quote unquote decline. So again, resistance, I would say, is 63, 64, something like that. If you can get above that, positive, or if you can, you don't need to get above it. You just need to kind of get into the general area, 63, 64. If the market attempts to rally and get stopped at somewhere around $62, then I think basically we go down one more time, and the correction, unfolds over a period of weeks as opposed to a period of days. So at issue in all markets is the degree of up that we finished. So we either finished a big up, in which case you need to take some time in correcting, or basically you had a spike down again and then back up again. I favor the second one.
Robin Mills, CEO of Qamar Energy. Robin, meanwhile, in terms of the fundamentals of supply and demand, less than 10 days or so before the next OPEC meeting, we had the Aramco results yesterday, as expected, of course, revenue down. But the outlook for demand recovery, I thought, was probably one of the takeaway headlines. Amin Nasser sees nearly back to pre-COVID levels before the end of the year, which is 99 million barrels. He said the pre-COVID is generally regarded as 100. But one of the more bullish outlooks we've heard from leading industry figures.
Yeah, it is, Sean. And, look, I think on the latest pullback in prices, I always, in general, prefer to look at the fundamentals. But I've got to agree with Omar on this. I don't think the fundamentals were playing a big role in this pullback. I just think the market had got a bit ahead of itself, and we were overdue a brief correction. But I don't see that as bearing on the fundamentals particularly. I think the fundamentals remain strong as long as OPEC discipline holds together. And you say, Nasser, of course, being very bullish on the demand recovery. The IEA, let's say, for example, is a bit more careful, not as strong an outlook, but still, seeing something like the IEA is seeing something like 5.5 million barrels a day of demand coming back.
It got my attention because I suppose in reading the tea leaves, it seemed like there was a bit of daylight between him and the language of the Saudi energy minister. And you would expect perhaps they would be more joined up. If we go by the Amin Nasser outlook, you'd say, well, there's no doubt they're going to have to increase production. The minister seems a lot more cautious in his tone.
Yes, maybe. But I think, Prince Abdulaziz will be patting himself on the back, with his decision to hold back supply in the last meeting because of this, now being kind of rewarded by this price pullback or being vindicated, really. But I don't think there's necessarily a conflict there. Look, I think there's a recognition that, that Saudi supply will have to come back this year. And, hopefully we are back by the end of the year getting towards pre-COVID levels. And then most of the Saudi supply will have to have come back by then. It's a question of how much and how quickly, really. I think there's no look, the Saudis, whether it's Prince Abdulaziz or Amin Nasser, they would love to be producing, back at 10 million a day again, when the market's ready for it.
Victor Yang, senior editor at JLC Network Technology. There is an old saying, I'm not sure if it translates into Cantonese or not, but all roads lead to Rome. I think yes. Beijing or China is now the new Rome, or getting close to it. And on this particular point of oil demand, Robin mentioned, as long as OPEC maintains its discipline. Well, we have an OPEC member, Iran. I'm not sure if it's maintaining discipline or not, but clearly a very significant amount of Iranian oil is ending up in China. And as a result, that is putting downward pressure on prices.
Well, there has been a lot of reports about China importing Iranian crude recently. Well, yes, well, and in our shipping data, we see some cargoes more cargoes say some from Malaysia or some other countries. Well, but actually we know some cargoes could be transshipped from other countries before they reach Malaysia or some other countries before they were a brandy or whatever, and then shipped to China. Yeah, but actually such cargoes had indeed increased over the past several months, so particularly the past 2 months as well. And such demand is mostly from independent refiners in Shandong. But now their demand has kind of declining this month, because now they have very high stocks at Shandong ports. That's quite rarely seen, a level quite rarely seen. And now the premiums have gone up quite a lot. Well, not just a few days, but over the past 2 months, particularly this month. And so also because of the maintenance, and in March and April and May, particularly from April, there will be more maintenance, Chinese refiners, so their demand is kind of slowing down now for now.
Victor, I wanted to get your views on the meeting between the U.S. foreign minister and the Chinese foreign minister on Friday in Alaska. It appeared to be a very difficult meeting for the two countries. How is it being reported in China? How is this? Is it making headlines? Does anybody care? What's the view in China?
Well, actually, it has been making headlines over the past days, the past 2 days, and some of the expressions said by the Chinese officials had gone viral. Say like the expression, "We Chinese people do not buy it," and actually in Chinese, the original expression might be even stronger than the English version. "We do not buy it."
We do not what? Sorry, we do not.
We do not buy it.
Buy it.
We do not buy it. It's because of what the American does. It was actually literally translated to, "This is not the way the United States should be dealing with China." But the actual meaning should be, "We Chinese people do not buy it." And if you understand Chinese and some of the wordings is very strong, very, very strong. And I wonder whether Western media would translate it into English correctly or sufficiently. And some of them might not be, some of the dialogues might not be translated at all. But according to what I see, I think some of the dialogues were written in Chinese, and it was very, very strong because of the U.S. government accusing China at the beginning. They didn't follow the basic protocol. So China defense very strongly, fight back very strongly. And actually Chinese people take pride in this. They were glad that we didn't we stick to our principles. We made it clear that we will not succumb to this the Americans' thumb. So the Chinese people actually take pride in that. And some of the expressions have been on T-shirts very quickly. Say like, "We Chinese people do not buy it," has shown up on people's T-shirts now. So, and I think
a good American tradition of putting the bumper sticker on the t-shirt. That's good. We don't buy it. I like that. Omar, what are you buying? Ultimately, the sort of Iranian wild card. We've had a few voices on the show in the last few days saying that it potentially could be quite destructive to the markets at 1 million barrels a day. It could be have an impact and not a positive one. Your own views on this wild card, this outlier, if it continues to grow?
Man, look, I think, the Iranian thing, I mean, today, I can't remember who it was, but one of the Iranian leaders said that, I think it was Khamenei, he said American promises, mean nothing. Not only that, but American signatures on deals mean nothing. So I don't understand. I mean, it's the same kind of thinking that brought us, shale is going to come back any second now, and Iran's going to come back any second now. And, this kind of, it's not wishful thinking. It's basically not understanding, human beings. Same with China. You cannot, for the US to go in and try to bully or talk down to China is a failure of diplomacy. It's a failure of basic, understanding of strategy of anything at all. The US, Europe included, because they're joined at the hip, it's like me and mini-me, have no understanding anymore of what diplomacy means.
Yes.
So when they talk about rule-based blah, 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 they mean their rules. And
Yes.
China, what did China say? China said, we favor rule-based, but we favor rules based on the UN, the UN rules, basically, as opposed to those made up by the US and Europe. Unfortunately, the world, or basically the Western world, no longer understands that it has basically lost not just a step, but the whole bloody race. So at the end of the day, you cannot have the US say to China what it did, while at the same time breaking its word, while at the same time, saying, don't interfere with our elections, but interfering in other people's, regime change, blah, 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 saying we love peace, but we send a few missiles to blow up things in Syria because we don't like them. I mean, it is no longer something that can, after Trump, that you can basically pretend. So at the end of the day, it's, the world's moved on. So you can forget about all that. I think the US was really shocked when China stood up and slapped the US back in the face. I think that tells us everything. They aren't adept enough strategically to understand, even at that level, how they have to speak to somebody else.
I think from a historic point of view, it will go down as, the world before Alaska and the world after. How profound it means, Robin, immediately for the oil markets. I think, coming back to your earlier point, that the Iranian oil exports, which are generally by a number of secondary sources now recognized to be upwards of 1 million barrels a day, how does the market, how does OPEC Plus cater for that unknown dimension that will certainly sustain, if not grow?
Yeah, look, a few 100,000 extra barrels a day of Iranian crude is okay. That can be accommodated. There's a lot of interesting geopolitical dimensions on why China is taking this oil now and so on. And I think a lot of it is just the Iranians getting better at disguising the shipments and avoiding the sanctions, and the Chinese buyers, as Victor was telling us, getting more comfortable with taking it. Certainly the teapots. But the bigger picture here is when and if Iran is going to come back as a major producer and exporter. And I think in that, the other OPEC countries will be quite relieved that
is 1 million barrels not that number? I mean, is that not a quantity in which that's a scale that the market, it's no longer a question of when they are. I mean, that's a lot of oil.
Yeah, but Iran hasn't been at zero. Iran is at the very low points. Perhaps it's 200,000 or 300,000, but 500,000 plus is a more realistic figure on average. So Iran has gained a few 100,000, perhaps 500,000, at a max, which is not nothing, of course. But on the other hand, there has been quite a bit of demand recovery as well. The real question is, are we going to get another 1.5 million barrels a day of Iranian supply back on the market, which we will get if there is a return to the JCPOA or another nuclear deal with the US. And I think on that, the other OPEC countries will be quite relieved that the Biden administration is off to a pretty rocky start, has not really been decisive on what it's going to do with Iran. Iran sending mixed signals as well. Neither side really getting down to talks. Now it's the Iranian New Year, then elections are coming up. So, it could be months and months before we have any serious discussions.
But what about the impact of the immediate sense for OPEC Plus meeting in a few days' time and the US or the policing of these sanctions of this oil exports, which according to US sanctions is a violation? How do you expect OPEC Plus, or how should they navigate that in their decision making?
Well, look, I think short term, they obviously take into the account that there's a few 100,000 barrels of Iranian oil on the market that wasn't there if we go back to November. And that's, it's good that OPEC is meeting monthly and they can adapt to that. Nobody knows quite how much that is, but that oil is showing up in the balances somewhere anyway. And then, really how they adapt longer term, that's a question for OPEC's longer term strategy. If talks start with the US and they're looking good, and then there's a realistic prospect of Iran going back to 2.5 million barrels a day of exports or so by end of the year, early next year, OPEC has got to factor that into its long-term plan. But they've got time to do that. I think, it's a question of, there's two questions, the short-term adjustments of supply and demand in the market, and the longer-term question of what do they do with an Iran that has come back and become a major player again.
Victor, you've talked about the fact that we're kind of in China's maintenance season, and so there's a dip in possible buying. What is the outlook for China demand beyond the maintenance, beyond May and into the sort of third quarter?
Well, the general outlook is quite optimistic, and for now, we are going to have a short public holiday in early April. For the so-called Tomb Sweeping Day. That's the day when we pay respect to our deceased, beloved as well, or ancestors as well. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have booking tickets or have booked tickets for this festival this day. And actually today I tried to book the train tickets for April 5th, but I didn't get it because it had all been booked. So been sold out, the tickets have been, and for May, we had a long public holiday. So a travel agency has recorded a better booking than the same level, than the same point in 2019. So actually demand is kind of, back to normal now. So apart from maintenance, and apart from this, consumption growing and this GDP grows, so we expect demand to be kind of pick up speed again after the maintenance in the second quarter.
Well, like you, Victor, I tried to book a holiday over the Easter break that's coming up here. And first of all, looked at going to the Seychelles, and it was all booked out. Then I looked to get a staycation in the UAE. All the hotels were full. So it strikes me that people will get back to traveling pretty fast between everything. That's what these anecdotals seem like. Let's do the survey question, which is in essence a two-part question today. And it's related to the outlook for the OPEC meeting. If we could bring up first question, which is, what do you think OPEC should decide at the next meeting? The second question will be, what do you think they will decide? But the first question is, what do you think OPEC should decide at the upcoming meeting on the 1st of April? Should they roll over and leave supply as it is, or should they increase supply? Should they roll over as they did last time, or should they increase supply? Where do you think demand is? And essentially, these are 1 month decisions. They're not quarterly decisions now. They're basically monthly ones. So what do you think is the answer to that? Omar, your thoughts on that, the should of it? What does the market handle? What's the market appetite for more oil, less oil?
If you ask me to, whether what they should do, they should roll over. What I think they will do is roll over. You saw very interesting stuff about Aramco and dividends and how their profits, quote unquote, plunged and all the rest of it. And OPEC and Saudi, make money from only one thing, which is oil. And everybody's telling them that this is it, it's the end, and everybody's going green and all the rest of it. So, you'd have to assume, again, like the Iranians, the Chinese, the Venezuelans, the Syrians, that they're sane people, and the Yemenis. So if they're sane, they're going to push prices higher. If they are, of course, insane, then yes, they will push prices lower. The Chinese will bow down. The Syrians will just, accept regime change. The Yemenis will walk out of the country. And the Russians will basically hand over all their nuclear weapons and say yes. But I think it's a sane world. So at the end of the day, that's
you think it's a sane world? That's a quote. We have to get that out. Omar Najia thinks it's a sane world. Gets the answer to the first survey question, and let's see how insane it may be. Rollover, they should roll over, increase supply 40%. Robin, your thoughts on that in terms of should?
Yeah, I think I think they'll roll over. Should, yeah, it's a bit of a toss-up for me, but I would incline, you probably guessed my previous comments that I would incline to increase. And really a few reasons for that. US production drilling is starting to come back, not in a big way, but it's a bit of a slightly worrying sign. I know Prince Abdulaziz thinks that shale has been permanently taught a lesson, but I think the hype and the boom will come back if prices are above 70 again. So some slight concerns on Indian demand, and I think the having the prices up around as they were only a short while ago above 70, I think is a bit of a warning that it's worth putting some more oil in the market. Yeah, the physical market still remains quite weak, and that's a concern. That's why I'm not totally 100% on that increase, but that still would be my inclination.
Okay, let's get the second half of that question just to get it on record. What do you think OPEC Plus will decide in the upcoming meeting? What do you think they will decide? Victor, in terms of obviously the higher oil price that we've seen in recent weeks that has come back, and the outlook for the rest of this year from China's point of view, how sensitive is the buying to the crude price in the 60s, whether it's low 60s or high 60s up to 70? Will it make any difference, do you think, from the point of view of China demand?
Well, yes, it will surely make some difference. And previously, crude were actually still quite high. I mean, say above 50, and China still bought a lot. And that was probably because, it's worries about this increasing geopolitical tension and was trying to secure supply. And say like in Myanmar, there was a pipeline shipping crude oil to China, to Southwest China. But what happened in Myanmar? So there was kind of concern about this and some other issues too. So the country tries to, secure its energy supply. But now the stockpiles have built up, really have built up. And I'm afraid there's not much spare capacity for many, many more cargoes when the maintenance is coming. So at least for a little time, for a short period of time, it will slow down to some degree. But after that, it will surely rebound. I mean, if the price is not to rebound too much, it's not to jump. So, but it's a bit sensitive, but not that much. I mean, maybe just a little difference. If it's not to jump. Yes.
Omar, your thoughts for the rest of the week? The market has opened in Asia, as we said at the top, that is down a little, the continued trend of most of last week. What's your outlook for this week ahead running into the OPEC meeting? Will the markets remain somewhat bearish, bullish? How do you see it?
No, I think basically for oil, like I said, if we can basically rally into a $63 handle, then I think short-lived correction, and off we go to the races once again. If basically the rally gets rejected, $62 and down we come, then it's going to take a little while longer to show we can just for a while before we start moving to the upside again. The trend is up. Same with equities, and same with Bitcoin. So I'd watch Bitcoin for market, for market sentiment, so to speak.
So Bitcoin for market risk appetite, ultimately.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Let's get the second survey result before giving Robin the last word. See where there's any difference between should and will. Irene, if you'd like to bring that up. Will, okay, a little bit stronger on the rollover. I'd say this, if that question is certain, the answer to that question has certainly changed, Robin, since the last week or so, since the price correction. The indicators before then were more bullish that the increase would come. My question to you, Robin, is that you've been a long advocate that OPEC should be increasing supply, recapturing market share. The longer they put this off, whether by hook or by crook, more barrels are coming into the market. First we had Libya, now we have Iran. I mean, ultimately, who will be next if OPEC Plus doesn't come back in with more supply?
Yeah, look, I think OPEC Plus should, look at back at the 80s when the market share that they'd lost by 86, they did not get that back until the early 2000s, a good 15 years. Now, not as extreme case this time probably, but I think that's something to look at. And, that's why I've advocated they should be more aggressive on getting market share back. Yeah, some of the other OPEC members who are not in the deal, Libya is volatile, right? And, up and down. Iran, a question mark, but it's obviously the potential that Iran comes back. And then there's, of course, some of the OPEC members who would love to increase supply within the framework of a deal, Iraq and UAE particularly. But then you've got the US, and I point this again, however much the US companies talk about being disciplined and returning capital to shareholders and this kind of stuff, you know that 6 months of prices above 70 or certainly above 80, they'll be drilling like crazy again because they always do. And that is a significant risk. And then same on the demand side, the longer prices remain relatively high, the weaker the demand recovery will be, and the more potential for part of that market to disappear and never come back.
We also have, just for the sake of additional barrels, and they come from everywhere when these prices, we have the giant field in Norway, the Johan Sverdrup field, expected to add, up to close to 80,000 barrels in the coming months as well. I mean, that's a field that has been, increasing now massively, heading towards 600,000 barrels a day. It's quite a mighty field the Norwegians have found and are operating there. But we'll have to see where OPEC goes, or where the sentiment, any signals in the coming days, one would think will be the direction the market takes. If we get signals of rollover, then the market would strengthen. If we don't, then maybe the other. But thank you very much, Victor, for checking in from China. Omar, as always, from Dubai, and Robin as well. Thank you for your insights and sharing your thoughts. We look forward to seeing everybody during the week, and have a great few days and a safe few days. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.